She didn't wave, didn't beg, just stood on the side of the road, soaked to the bone, gripping something in her tiny hands. When he pulled over and rolled the window down, she looked up and said, "You dropped this a long time ago." It was a photo of him. Age 7. Damien Rourke stared at the child through the drizzle. The girl's coat clung to her like wet tissue paper, hood half off, revealing tangled chestnut hair plastered to her face. Her eyes, though, they were wide, watchful, blue, sharp, unwavering. He took the photo with numb fingers. It was old, warped. Edges curled from time, the image faded but unmistakable. A boy, grinning with a chipped front tooth, standing barefoot on a rusted trailer's wooden porch. His red shirt had a dinosaur on it. He hadn't seen this photo in over 20 years. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice low, more thunder than curiosity. The girl didn't flinch. "My mama kept it. She said it was important." Damien looked past her, scanning the shoulder of the mountain road. No cars. No houses. Just dark forest swallowing the two-lane highway. Rain ticked on the roof of his Bentley like impatient fingers. "Where's your mom?" he asked. The girl glanced toward the woods but said nothing. He leaned out the window. "You shouldn't be out here alone." "I'm not," she replied quietly. "She's waiting." Damien hesitated, then opened the door. Rain burst in like a tide. "Get in," he said. She climbed into the passenger seat, shivering, silent. Damien turned the heat up, placed the photo on the dash, and checked his mirrors again. "I'm taking you to the sheriff," he said, glancing her way. "What's your name?" She hugged her soaked knees. "Ava." "How old are you?" 7. 7. The same age he was in that photo. Damien pulled away from the shoulder, headlights cutting the gray. The road twisted down the mountain, fog curling like smoke across the pavement. He tapped the steering wheel, brain churning through questions he wasn't sure how to ask. "You said your mom kept that photo. Did she know me?" Ava stared straight ahead. "She used to watch you from the fence." He nearly slammed the brakes. "What fence?" She finally looked at him. "The chain link one. You lived behind the junkyard. Mama used to ride her bike there and hide in the trees." Memory stirred, like dust in sunlight. A feeling more than a picture. A flash of laughter. A girl's voice, maybe, across the creek behind the Rourke trailer lot. "She said you had a dog," Ava added. "Yeah. Boone." His voice cracked without warning. "He died when I was 10. She cried when he did." Damien blinked. "She cried." Ava nodded solemnly. "Said you were the only good thing in that whole place." His throat tightened. What was her name? But the girl didn't answer. She was staring out the window again, at something behind them. He glanced in the mirror. Headlights. A pair of them. High up, bright, too close for comfort. They hadn't been there 30 seconds ago. Damien tapped the gas. The Bentley surged forward. The headlights stayed with them. He looked again. No markings. No flashing reds or blues. Just a large black truck, maybe a Dodge or a Ford, riding too close on a wet road. "Do you recognize that car?" he asked Ava. She didn't answer. "Ava." "I told you," she said softly. "She's waiting." Before he could press her, the truck behind them swerved, trying to come up alongside. Damien's fingers tightened on the wheel. What the hell? The truck's brights flared. It veered closer, bumping the Bentley's rear corner. Damien corrected hard, tires shrieking on slick asphalt. "They're trying to run us off the road," he snapped. Ava didn't scream. Didn't cry. She sat very still. Like she'd been through this before. "Who is that?" Damien barked. She finally turned to him. Her voice was calm, but her words sliced clean. "The people who made Mama disappear." The truck surged forward again, smashing into the Bentley's rear panel, hard enough to send them into the oncoming lane. Damien swore, fighting the wheel. His mansion in Aspen. His board meeting tomorrow. His $180,000 car. All of it meant nothing now, not with a 7-year-old girl clutching her knees and a ghost from his past hurtling through the rain beside him. Then Ava whispered, "Turn left. There's a road. Hurry." He saw it, barely, a narrow dirt path winding down into the woods. He yanked the wheel. The Bentley skidded. Gravel flew. The car thudded onto the old path, branches slapping the windshield. Behind them, the truck screamed past, missing the turn. Damien didn't stop. Trees rose like black pillars around them. The road dipped, curved, vanished in shadows. And Ava said, "You're going to see her again now." He slowed. "See who?" he asked. But she just pointed through the windshield. And there, between the trees, stood a woman in a long red coat, holding something in her hands. Then the Bentley engine sputtered. And died. Rain hammered the windshield as silence filled the car. The wipers had frozen mid-swipe, and the dashboard lights flickered, then blinked out altogether. Damien twisted the key, pressed the ignition. Nothing. The Bentley was dead. In the beam of the headlights, fading now to a weak yellow glow, the woman in the red coat stood perfectly still, her figure half obscured by mist and branches. She wasn't moving. Just watching. Damien's heart pounded in his chest. "Ava, who is that?" The girl didn't speak. Her eyes were locked on the woman, lips slightly parted. "Stay here," he said, grabbing the door handle. Ava's hand shot out, small and cold, grabbing his wrist. "Don't go to her angry," she said. "She'll feel it." He looked at her, stunned. "What does that mean?" "She only shows herself when she wants to." Before he could ask more, the woman stepped forward. Just a few paces. Enough to make her face visible. Damien's breath caught in his throat. It was her. Older, thinner, but unmistakable. Same dark hair, though streaked with silver now. Same heart-shaped face. Her eyes were wide and hollow, like someone who hadn't slept in a decade. "Emily," he murmured. She didn't answer. Didn't wave. Just stood there, holding something, a folded jacket, maybe, against her chest. He opened the door, stepping into the cold. Mud squelched under his shoes, the storm soaking him instantly. The girl stayed in the car, watching through the window. Damien took cautious steps toward the woman. "Emily, is it really you?" She didn't flinch. "I thought you were dead." Her lips parted slightly, as if she were about to speak, but no words came. He kept moving. 10 feet. 5. She didn't retreat. When he was close enough to touch her, he paused. Why are you here?" She finally moved. Slowly, she held out the jacket she'd been cradling. It was his. Child-sized. Red. Faded dinosaur print across the front. Just like in the photo. He stared at it, stunned. "Where did you get that?" Emily's mouth trembled. "You left it," she said softly. "When they took you away." Damien's stomach twisted. "What?" "They came one night," she said, her voice trembling. "Men in uniforms. Said there was a call. That your father." Her voice broke. "You were crying. You dropped this when they pulled you out." He looked down at the jacket in her hands, and something in his memory cracked open like a rotten door. A scream. Boots stomping through a hallway. A hand yanking him up by the arm. "Child Protective Services," he whispered. Emily nodded. "I wanted to run after you, but I was just a kid. My dad would've." She stopped herself. Damien reached out and took the jacket. His fingers trembled. "I thought I imagined you," he said. "The girl behind the fence." "I was real," she whispered. "But they told me never to talk to you. Said you were dangerous. Said your family was trash," he finished bitterly. Her eyes filled with tears. "You were the kindest person I ever knew. Even when they hit you." Even when you had nothing. They stood there in the storm, years collapsing between them like brittle leaves. And then Ava opened the car door. Emily turned sharply. Her face went pale. "You brought her," she said, a tremor in her voice. Damien glanced back. "She said you were her mother." Emily shook her head. "She's not supposed to be here." Ava stepped forward, not afraid, not even shivering. She held the photo in both hands now, like an offering. "You told me to find him," she said. "You said he needed to remember." Damien looked between them. "What the hell is going on?" Emily's shoulders sagged, and suddenly she looked so tired. Like every bone in her body carried a memory she hadn't wanted. "She's not exactly mine," she said. "She's ours." The air went still. Damien blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I was pregnant," Emily said, voice shaking. "When you left. I didn't know until weeks later. And I couldn't tell anyone. They'd have taken her." "You were." He staggered back a step. "No. That's not possible. We were kids." 15, she said, her voice raw. "It happened." Damien looked at Ava, standing so still in the rain. She looked back at him. And in that moment, he saw it. Not just the eyes. The tilt of her chin. The way she held herself, silent but stubborn. His daughter. His knees nearly gave out. Why didn't you ever tell me?" he whispered. Emily wiped her face. "I tried. I wrote letters. I called. But you were in foster care, then group homes. Then you changed your name. You disappeared." He'd buried the past so deep he didn't even dream about it anymore. Damien Rourke hadn't been born in a penthouse. He'd been born in a trailer that reeked of gasoline and regret. "I found her 3 weeks ago," Emily said. "In a house up north. She was with people who shouldn't have had her. They forged records. I had to take her." "That truck," Damien said. "They were after her?" "They want her back," she said. "Not because they love her. Because they're hiding something. And they know what she knows." Ava stepped closer. "I heard them," she said. "In the basement. I know what they did to the others." Damien looked between them, the weight of this truth crushing him. His daughter. Raised in silence. Hidden like shame. Suddenly, the forest lit up, white beams cutting through the trees. The truck. It had found them. Emily grabbed Ava's hand. "Run," she whispered. "Now." But Damien didn't move. He stepped in front of both of them, rain pouring down his face. Because for the first time in his life, he had something to protect, and he wasn't going to lose her again. From the trees, a voice shouted. "You've got something that belongs to us. Give her back, or we take her by force." Emily turned to Damien, eyes wide with panic. And then Ava said, barely louder than the wind, "They're not just men. They're the ones who made Mama disappear." And from the shadows, another silhouette stepped forward. One Damien remembered from his nightmares. The man with the coin-shaped scar beneath his eye. The one who'd dragged him out of his trailer when he was 7. Damien's breath clouded in the cold air as he locked eyes with the man stepping out of the truck. The scar under his eye was unmistakable, a pale crescent carved into his cheek like a cruel reminder. It had been over 2 decades, but Damien remembered him with the precision of trauma. "Mitchell," he muttered. The man smirked, his boots sinking into the mud as he advanced. 2 more figures stepped out behind him, both broad-shouldered and armed, shadows of government men or something colder. Emily gripped Ava's hand tighter, trying to pull her backward into the tree line, but Damien raised his hand to stop her. Mitchell's voice was calm, like someone making a sales pitch. "Didn't think you'd be the one to find her, Rourke. But I should have known. You always were a nosy little bastard." "You were supposed to be Child Protective Services," Damien said, his voice rough. "You weren't." Mitchell gave a slight shrug. "We were whatever we needed to be. Your daddy got into some deep stuff, son. There were eyes on your family long before you even learned to write your name. You took me from my home, Damien growled. Home? Mitchell barked a laugh. That place was a biohazard. You're lucky we pulled you out before someone else did worse. You didn't pull me out, Damien said. You erased everything. My name, my history, my mother's face. And now you're after her. He pointed to Ava. Why? Mitchell's smirk vanished. That girl holds information that doesn't belong out in the open. Your little girlfriend thought she could disappear with her. But kids listen. Kids remember. I don't care what she remembers, Damien said. You're not taking her. You don't have a choice. I do now. From beneath his coat, Damien drew a small pistol. It was silver, compact, legal, a habit from his paranoid years building his tech empire in the shadows of men like Mitchell. Mitchell and his men froze. Careful now, one of them muttered, reaching subtly toward his belt. You touch that gun, Damien said, voice sharp, and I'll put a hole in your boss's knee before you can finish blinking. Emily's voice trembled. We have to run. Now. But Ava stepped forward. No, she said. Emily gasped and reached to grab her, but Ava stepped around her mother and stared at Mitchell. You lied. You told the others my mom was dead. You said she tried to hurt me. Mitchell's smile returned, slow and serpentine. You're too young to understand the weight of things, sweetheart. I understand enough, Ava said. I heard you in the basement. The recordings. The files. Emily looked stunned. You found them? Ava nodded slowly. They called it Project Laceleaf. I remember the code word. The men behind Mitchell shifted. Mitchell didn't smile anymore. You've been a busy little mouse, haven't you? You were using us, Ava continued. All the kids. For testing. Sleep deprivation. Chemicals in the food. You said we were chosen. You lied. Damien's hand clenched the pistol tighter. Get in the car, he said to Ava. Both of you. Now. But the car won't start, Emily began. I'll handle that, he said. Just move. Mitchell took one step forward. And Damien fired. The shot was clean, sharp, and deliberate. It missed Mitchell by inches but tore into the ground between his feet. Mud exploded upward. Next one lands in your leg, Damien said coldly. Mitchell raised his hands, but his face was dark with fury. Emily grabbed Ava and darted toward the Bentley. She wrenched the door open and shoved the girl inside, diving in after her. Damien kept the pistol steady as he backed away. You can't keep this up forever, Mitchell said. You don't have any idea who you're protecting. I know enough, Damien said. She's my daughter. Mitchell's smile returned. Is she? Are you sure? A chill ran up Damien's spine. What the hell does that mean? But Mitchell only raised 2 fingers, signaling his men to hold position. Then he stepped back. We'll be seeing each other again real soon, Rourke. Enjoy the fairy tale while it lasts. He turned and vanished into the trees. The others followed silently. Damien ran back to the Bentley. The engine was still dead, the dashboard lifeless. He opened the back and yanked the emergency power kit from the trunk, popped the hood, and connected the terminals. Rain lashed his face, but he worked like a man possessed. Inside, Emily sat in the front seat, holding Ava tightly. I don't understand, Emily said, shaking. How did she find all that? What was Project Laceleaf? Damien dropped the hood and climbed into the driver's seat. He twisted the key again. The engine groaned, then sputtered to life. We'll find out, he said, wiping water from his eyes. But not here. They sped off down the dirt road, bouncing and sliding over rocks and roots. The forest swallowed them behind thick curtains of rain. As they reached the bottom of the hill, Ava suddenly pointed. There. That sign. A broken wood marker leaned at an angle in the mist, nearly hidden by vines. Morning Star Sanctuary, closed until further notice. Emily's face paled. This place. Damien slowed the car. You know it. Her hand went to her mouth. My aunt used to bring me here as a kid. Before it was shut down. It was a convent. But there were rumors. What kind of rumors? Children, she whispered. Experiments. Disappearances. People said it was just a home for orphans, but no one ever left. Damien turned onto the overgrown drive. Ava's eyes were wide. She said we'd be safe here, the girl whispered. Who? Damien asked. But Ava just stared into the fog. And then, ahead of them, the sanctuary appeared, black stone walls rising through the trees like the bones of something ancient. Lights flickered behind broken windows. And just as Damien slowed the car to a stop, every phone inside the Bentley, including the one Damien had locked in the glove box, began to ring at once. Unknown number. Then a text appeared, pulsing on all screens simultaneously. You shouldn't have come here. Damien stared at the message glowing on the dashboard screen. The words pulsed like a heartbeat. You shouldn't have come here. One by one, the phones went black. Emily gripped Ava's hand in the back seat. Turn around, she whispered. Damien, we shouldn't be here. Too late for that, he muttered, eyes scanning the sanctuary's looming silhouette. The building was massive, Gothic, half in ruin, with collapsed towers and cracked stained-glass windows that stared down like shattered eyes. Vines crept up the stone like veins, and the iron gate at the front was swung open, rusted and silent. I thought this place was shut down, he said. It was, Emily replied. Years ago. The papers called it a structural collapse, said mold made it uninhabitable. But no one ever went in to verify. They just let it rot. Damien stepped out of the car, water pooling around his shoes. The air felt colder here, wrong somehow. The trees were dead this deep in the forest. No birds. No insects. Only the steady hiss of rain and the hiss of wind through broken glass. Ava climbed out behind him, silent and pale. Why here? He asked her. She showed me in a dream, Ava said. She said this is where it started. Damien's jaw tightened. Who did? Ava looked up at him, her voice barely audible. The other me. Before he could respond, the sanctuary's front door creaked open. No wind. No footsteps. Just the door. Swinging inward. Emily grabbed his arm. We're not going in there. We have nowhere else to go. She said it's safe, Ava repeated. Damien drew his pistol again, checked the chamber, and stepped through the gate. Inside the sanctuary, the smell hit first. Musty wood, damp stone, something faintly metallic underneath it all. The foyer was vast, with vaulted ceilings and a wide staircase splitting in two directions. Old pews were stacked in corners, and a long carpet ran down the center, blackened with rot. He swept the room with his eyes. No movement. Just silence and decay. Ava walked ahead of him without fear. Wait, he called, but she didn't stop. She moved toward a hallway flanked by stone pillars and stopped beside a cracked painting on the wall, an old fresco of Saint Cecilia, the patron saint of the unheard. Damien joined her. The painting had been defaced, smeared with ash or soot. But someone had scratched words into the plaster beneath it. They listen when you're silent. He frowned. What the hell does that mean? Emily was trembling. I want to leave. I don't care what answers are here. This place isn't right. I know, Damien said. But if this is where they kept her, if this is where they started that project, there might be files. Proof. They'll destroy us, Emily said. People like Mitchell, they don't operate under laws. They disappear people. Damien turned to her. Then they better be ready for a fight. Ava turned away from the fresco and pointed toward a stairwell leading down into the dark. There's a room, she said. With yellow tiles. That's where the tapes are. Damien stared into the blackness beyond the stairwell. Something about the shadows there felt alive, not moving, but watching. Waiting. He switched on the flashlight app on his phone and led the way down. Each step creaked underfoot. The stone walls narrowed, the air turning colder. At the bottom of the stairs, the hallway opened into a series of rooms, old medical facilities, judging by the rusted gurneys and equipment pushed against the walls. Then they saw it. A door labeled archives with peeling gold letters. The handle was broken. A chain wrapped tightly around it, secured with a small, modern keypad. Damien examined the lock. Electric, he muttered. Battery-powered. And recent. They're still using this place, Emily said. Someone's been here. Can you open it? Ava asked. Damien nodded slowly. Yeah, I can. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device, a decryptor. One of the perks of running a cybersecurity firm, access to tools the government didn't even admit existed. He clamped it to the keypad, and after a few seconds, the numbers blinked green. The chain dropped. Inside, the archive was a small room with floor-to-ceiling shelves, metal drawers, old file boxes, and dozens of unmarked VHS tapes stacked like bricks. An old projector sat in the corner, covered in dust. Emily shut the door behind them. Damien grabbed the nearest tape. No label. He slid it into the projector and powered it on. The screen flickered to life against the wall. The image was grainy, black and white. A girl sat at a table in a small concrete room. No more than 6 years old. Blonde hair. Pale eyes. She looked directly into the camera. Then a voice, male, deep, asked, "Tell us what you saw when you closed your eyes." The girl began to cry. Damien reached for another tape. Inserted it. This time, it was a boy. He was screaming. Thrashing. 2 men held him down while a third injected something into his neck. Emily turned away, hand over her mouth. Damien stopped the tape. Ava stared at the screen. "Those were my friends," she whispered. "They said I could talk to the ones who left. They made me draw them." Damien looked at her sharply. "What do you mean, the ones who left?" "They said I was special," Ava continued, as if in a trance. "They said I could hear the ones who didn't wake up. They asked me questions. Made me listen to machines." Emily knelt in front of her, tears running down her cheeks. "They used you." Ava looked at her, calm and cold. "They said I belonged to the project. That I was grown for it." Damien froze. "Grown?" Ava nodded. "That's what they said when they thought I was asleep. That they grew me from something special." Emily looked at Damien. "You don't think?" He shook his head slowly. "Cloning. Gene manipulation. This sounds insane. But if she wasn't born the way we thought, then where did she come from?" They stood in silence. Then Ava looked toward the shelves. "There's a blue box," she said. "Behind the others. It has a number on it. 1977. Damien scanned the shelves, spotted a box covered in dust and pulled it free. Inside was a single tape. Blue. Labeled. Subject 0, Rourke. He stared at it in disbelief. Emily backed away. "No. No, we don't need to watch that." But Ava reached up and slid the tape into the projector. The screen went black. Then a voice crackled through. "This recording is for internal review only. Subject shows resilience to neural conditioning and extreme resistance to trauma-based memory alteration." The screen flickered. A small boy appeared on the screen. He was 7. He was barefoot. He was Damien. The room fell silent as the image of 7-year-old Damien flickered on the screen. His hair was shorter then, buzzed unevenly. His eyes were hollow, tired. His face bore the vacant look of someone who had seen too much for a child that young. Emily pressed her hand over her mouth. Damien stood frozen. Ava didn't blink. On screen, Young Damien sat strapped to a chair. Electrodes dotted his temple. Behind him stood 3 men in surgical gowns. One was Mitchell, younger, but unmistakable, his coin-shaped scar already a part of him. A calm female voice spoke from off-screen. Subject 0, Damien Rourke. Trial 47. Begin sequence. One of the men flipped a switch. The boy's body jerked as if shocked. He gasped, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Emily turned away, tears streaming silently. Ava, expression unreadable, reached for her hand but never looked away from the screen. Then the female voice again. Query, who do you see in the fire? The boy shook, tears leaking from his eyes. And then he whispered, hoarse and broken. A girl. With the braid. Damien staggered back a step. I remember that, he whispered. That dream. I thought it was just a nightmare. Ava turned to him. It wasn't. They put it there. Emily looked up, eyes full of disbelief. They manipulated your memories? They planted them, Ava said, to see if he could be broken like the others. But he never did. That's why they marked him 0. The video crackled. On screen, young Damien began humming something. The sound distorted, painful in its repetition. It was a lullaby, low, off-key, haunting. Emily froze. That's the same song you used to hum at night, she whispered. When we were kids. Behind the fence. I thought my mom used to sing it, Damien said. But maybe I was just remembering this. He hit eject. The tape clunked out. The room remained dark. And then, somewhere above them, a loud metallic clang echoed through the halls. Someone else was in the sanctuary. Emily grabbed Ava. We need to go. Damien yanked open the archive door and peered into the hallway. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoed from above. The staircase creaked. Ava pointed to a door on the far side of the archives. That leads to the old tunnels, she whispered. They go under the chapel. There's a way out. They ran. The door was old, wood-swollen by time. Damien kicked it twice before it burst open, revealing a narrow stone corridor that reeked of mildew. They darted inside just as flashlight beams flickered down the stairwell behind them. Down here, someone shouted. Damien slammed the tunnel door shut and threw a bolt across it. Move. The tunnel descended steeply, the walls slick with moss. Faint electric bulbs lined the ceiling, some shattered, others flickering dimly. Emily's breathing was ragged. Where do these lead? They used them to move kids without being seen, Ava said quietly. To take them to the other facility. What other facility? Damien asked. But Ava just looked up at him. The real one. They reached an intersection, 3 paths branching like veins. Damien paused. Which way? Ava looked around, then pointed left. There. That's where she is. Who? Emily asked. But Ava had already taken off, her small form vanishing into the shadows ahead. They followed. The passage sloped upward now. The air changed, warmer, less stagnant. They passed an old steel door, sealed and marked restricted, Class 5. Damien tried the handle. It didn't budge. Ava, he called. She had stopped ahead in front of another door, wooden, carved with a symbol Damien didn't recognize. A triangle enclosed in a circle, with a line running through its center. He joined her, out of breath. What is this place? She's in here, Ava said. The one they couldn't erase. Damien looked at the symbol again. It itched at the back of his mind like something he'd seen once as a child, in a nightmare, maybe, or etched into the corner of a file. He pushed the door open. The room inside was circular, candlelit, with bookshelves lining every wall. At the center sat a girl. She looked 16, pale, thin. Her arms were covered in faded injection marks. Her hair was white, her eyes hollow. She didn't turn as they entered. Damien stepped closer. Who are you? The girl whispered. They called me Echo. Emily pulled Ava behind her protectively. Is she? Ava slipped free and walked straight up to Echo. The two of them locked eyes. And in the silence that followed, Damien felt something shift in the room. The air turned colder. The walls seemed to lean inward. Echo smiled weakly. You made it, she said to Ava. I followed the dream, Ava replied. What dream? Damien asked. Echo looked up at him, her gaze glassy and ancient. The one they left in your blood. Before you even understood what they were doing to you. Damien's mouth went dry. You know me. I was part of the same generation. You were the first. I was the third. She pointed to her temple. They kept some of your sequences. Your resistance fascinated them. So they tried to replicate it. Emily stared. She's a clone. Something like that, Echo said. A neural echo. Hence the name. Why are you here? Damien asked. Why didn't they take you? They tried, Echo said. But I slipped out of their net. The sanctuary is a blind spot. Built over something older. Something they don't control. Suddenly, Ava looked at her. They're coming. Echo nodded. They always are. Damien took a step forward. Why does Ava remember you? Echo's eyes turned to him. Because she isn't just your daughter. Damien's heart stuttered. Echo continued, slowly. She's a convergence. Built from more than one strand. Yours. Mine. Others. The last of their trials. Emily gasped. That's why they want her back. She's not just evidence. She's the blueprint. A distant boom shook the walls. Damien turned toward the tunnel. They've breached the door. Echo stood, unsteady but strong. There's one way out. But it requires something from you. Anything, Damien said. Echo looked at Ava. She can't survive out there unless the tether is broken. What tether? Emily asked. To the others, Echo said. To the voices she hears. The memories that aren't hers. They'll pull her apart over time. Ava's voice was quiet. Will it hurt? Echo knelt. Yes. But it will free you. Another boom. Louder. Closer. Damien gripped Echo's arm. What do I do? She reached into a small drawer and pulled out a syringe filled with pale blue fluid. You inject her. You choose her over them. Damien froze. Inject her with what? Memory severance. The last dose. Once used on me. It will cut the neural ties the project built into her mind. Emily stepped between them. Wait, what if it's a trap? What if it hurts her worse? Echo looked at them both. You don't have time to argue. The door at the far end of the tunnel exploded inward. Damien looked at Ava, small, quiet, eyes wide and calm. She nodded. I trust you, Daddy. His hand trembled as he took the syringe. Behind him, footsteps pounded closer. And Damien plunged the needle into her arm. Ava screamed. And the world around them fractured like glass. The scream wasn't just Ava's. It echoed through the air like a splitting fault line, deeper than a child's cry, raw, rupturing. Damien stumbled back, the syringe falling from his hand, clattering to the stone floor as Ava collapsed to her knees. Damien! Emily dropped beside the girl, trying to hold her. Ava's body convulsed in short, jerking spasms, her breath shallow, hands clutched at her sides. Then the candles went out. Every single one. Darkness swallowed the room. And in that breathless void, a sound rose, distant at first, like wind screaming through a canyon. Then closer. Voices. Hundreds of them. Whispering. Wailing. Begging. Names. Numbers. Phrases repeated in monotone. Like fractured echoes from 1,000 broken minds. Ava's mouth opened, too wide, and from it came words not her own. They are inside me. All of them. Still screaming. Still burning. Emily gasped and pulled back, her hands trembling. This isn't right. This isn't just memory. It's something else. She's crossing the threshold, Echo said, her voice eerily calm. The tether is unspooling. Damien dropped to his knees, grabbing Ava's shoulders. Ava! Stay with me. Look at me. You're here. You're not alone. She looked up. Her eyes were glowing faintly blue, like something behind them was trying to shine through. Echo reached into her coat and pulled out a thin metallic disc. She slammed it onto the stone floor, and it glowed to life with a soft, pulsing hum. A containment field. Immediately, the air inside the circle steadied. Ava's body eased. The glow in her eyes flickered, then went dark. She blinked. Dad! She whispered, voice hoarse. Damien wrapped his arms around her, burying her against his chest. You're okay. I've got you. Footsteps echoed from the tunnel entrance. Closer, sharper. Echo stood by the door, watching the corridor. They're through the archives. We have minutes, if that. Emily stood, still shaking. Is she safe now? For now, Echo said. But the noise, they'll try to reattach. They always try. Damien stood, lifting Ava in his arms. What now? Echo walked to the far side of the circular room, pressing her palm against a section of wall that looked like solid stone. With a soft hiss, it slid open. A narrow passage lay beyond, slick, steep, spiraling upward into black. The chapel, she said. It exits into the forest. You'll need to go now. Emily hesitated. You're not coming. Echo shook her head. This place is built on too many screams. I was born from them. I belong to them. But she nodded to Ava. She might still have a future. Damien took a step forward. You don't have to stay here. But Echo just smiled, sad and steady. Someone has to close the gate. Or they'll follow you. And then she pulled something from her sleeve. A detonator. Emily's eyes widened. No, there has to be another way. There isn't. Echo's voice cracked for the first time. We're just ghosts in the walls, Emily. Let us fade. She pressed a sequence of buttons on the detonator. 10 minutes. Damien nodded once, then turned and vanished up the spiral passageway. Ava held tightly to him. Emily followed, sobbing silently. They climbed for what felt like an eternity. Above, a faint light bled through cracks in a trapdoor. Damien pushed it open. They emerged into the ruined chapel, once majestic, now skeletal. The stained glass was shattered, casting fractured rainbows across the wet stone. The altar lay in rubble. They ran. Out through the rear chapel doors, into the open forest. And behind them, deep within the sanctuary's bowels, Echo stood inside the containment circle, listening to the whispers rise again, louder now, urgent and angry. She closed her eyes. 10 seconds. 9. 8. She smiled. Let me sleep. And pressed the button. The explosion ripped through the earth with a sound like thunder screaming. The ground trembled beneath Damien's feet as a fireball bloomed behind them, smoke pouring into the sky. Birds burst from trees in frantic flight. He turned, shielding Ava with his coat as debris rained down. Emily stared at the smoking remains. She gave her life. She gave us time, Damien said. Now we make it count. They ran through the trees, following an old deer trail until they reached the edge of a ravine. A small ranger station stood abandoned on the other side. Inside, they found a landline. Miraculously still working. Damien dialed. A voice picked up on the third ring. Rourke. Logan, Damien said, breathing hard. Code red. Lockdown protocol. There was silence on the line. You're not joking, Logan said. I'm sending you data. Files. Names. I need them disseminated immediately across every media contact we've got. You're burning it all. Everything, Damien said. They took my life once. Not again. He hung up and turned to Emily. She was seated at the edge of the ranger's cot, Ava wrapped in her arms. You think exposing them will be enough? She asked softly. No, Damien said. But it'll burn a hole wide enough to drag them through. He sat beside them, eyes distant. But Ava's voice broke the silence. They'll keep coming, she whispered. Even when the world sees. Damien looked down at her. Then we fight harder. She looked up at him. There's something else, she said. Emily stiffened. What? Ava reached into the pocket of her coat. Pulled out a small chip, dark, smooth, no label. They hid this in me. I only remembered when the noise stopped. She handed it to Damien. Echo called it the seed. Damien held it up. It glinted in the dim light. What is it? He asked. Ava's voice trembled. The map to where the others are. Emily's hand covered her mouth. There are more. Ava nodded. They kept them sleeping. Waiting. Damien stared at the chip. And behind his eyes, the fire still burned. The chip felt too light in Damien's palm for what it claimed to carry. A map. To others like Ava. Children grown in shadow, programmed and discarded, buried in digital silence by men who had reshaped human memory like clay. He slipped the chip into his watch's embedded reader, a custom design from his private lab, disguised as a luxury accessory. The interface lit up silently, no boot sequence or splash screen. Just a single blinking folder labeled Seed. Password protected. He stared at it. Ava, he said gently. Do you know the code? She was curled on the ranger station cot, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her face looked too tired for her age, but her eyes still had that watchful depth, as if she carried the weight of many voices in her small chest. She nodded once. 5-9, Delta, Rourke 3. He typed it in. The folder opened. Emily stood beside him, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She hadn't spoken in the last 10 minutes. Too much had broken inside her too quickly. But now, she leaned in, watching the screen. Inside the folder, schematics, data logs, names, and a map. A digital globe spun slowly. Red markers lit up in 6 locations across the world: rural Alaska, a dead mining town in Ukraine, a compound in the Australian outback, a freight yard in Argentina, a decommissioned naval base in Greenland. And one more. Underground. Washington, D.C. Damien zoomed in. The marker blinked beneath what appeared to be a luxury business complex. He tapped the icon. The site name read, Echelon Vault 01, status, active, clearance level Omega. Emily exhaled sharply. They're still operational. Not just hiding, active. Damien's jaw clenched. Which means they still have kids. He tapped another folder inside the interface. Project Laceleaf, live subjects, 14 remaining. Ava looked up. 14. She whispered the number like it carried a curse. There were more, she said. I remember them in my sleep. I remember the ones they let fade. Damien's voice was quiet. These 14, are they like you? She hesitated. Some are broken. Some are empty. But one of them, they called her Oracle. Emily frowned. What did she do? Ava shook her head. She never spoke. But she knew when someone would disappear. Every time. Emily's hand trembled. Like she saw the future? Ava shrugged. Like she'd already lived it. Damien stood. We're going there. Emily looked at him, startled. To D.C. That's a suicide mission. That facility isn't a warehouse. That's federal protection, black site level. You think they'll let you walk in and rescue a dozen genetic experiments? I don't plan to walk in, he said. I plan to burn it down. He tapped his watch, uploading the map to a secure satellite connection. Then he turned toward a wall safe in the ranger station, hidden behind a false panel. He pried it open and pulled out a satellite phone, a black duffel, and a keyring with an old crest. Emily narrowed her eyes. What is that? He threw the bag on the table. Inside, military-grade gear. Comms, trackers, encrypted drives, cold cash, and a silenced pistol. Damien zipped it shut. Contingency Kit 6. For when all trust is lost. You've had this ready? He met her eyes. Since the first time someone tried to erase my past. I knew they'd come back. Emily turned away, hands in her hair. You're not thinking straight. You're doing the same thing they did, pulling a child into a war she didn't choose. Damien knelt beside Ava. You're not going with us, he said softly. You're staying safe. There's someone I trust. She'll get you out of the country. Ava's lip trembled. But they'll come for me again. Damien touched her hand. Not when they're chasing smoke and fire on the other side of the world. Emily watched the two of them, pain in every line of her face. What if we fail? Damien stood. Then we fail making noise. The kind that can't be silenced. He stepped outside, pulling a signal booster from the duffel and mounting it on the satellite dish. Within seconds, his private network buzzed back to life. He sent out one command. Initiate glass rain. Back inside, the ranger station's radio came to life. A calm, professional voice spoke. Priority 1 alert acknowledged. Operatives inbound. ETA, 6 hours. Evac point locked. Ava sat quietly by the window. Emily joined her, brushing her hair back. We'll protect you. No matter what. Ava didn't answer. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the dark tree line beyond the ranger station. They're watching, she whispered. Emily froze. Who? Ava raised her hand slowly, pointing. Damien returned to the room just in time to see it. A dark figure standing between the trees. Motionless. Tall. Backlit by the faint orange haze of firelight from the ruins of the sanctuary. Then it moved. Not forward, but backward. Sliding into the dark like it had never been there. Damien grabbed the binoculars. Scanned the woods. Gone. No footprints. No heat signature. Just a scrap of paper nailed to a tree. He jogged out, pistol drawn, and tore it down. One sentence. Written in black ink. The seed was never meant to be planted. He looked up. And realized. There wasn't just one watching. Dozens of small, glinting red lights dotted the woods. Motion sensors. Or eyes. Emily stood behind him, her voice low. We're not alone, Damien. He folded the paper and tucked it into his coat. No, he said. We never were. Suddenly, the satellite phone buzzed. Incoming video. Secure encryption. He accepted. The screen showed a black-suited man in a clean office. Polished wood behind him. American flag. A small silver badge clipped to his jacket. U.S. Intelligence Bureau, Deputy Director. Mr. Rourke, the man said smoothly. You've made quite a mess. Damien said nothing. You've triggered something old. Something that should have stayed buried. 14 children are still alive, Damien said. I'm coming for them. The man nodded, almost with admiration. We figured you would. Then his tone dropped, colder. But understand this, you're not exposing a conspiracy. You're unearthing a design. And the last man who tried that, forgot his own name before he reached the courthouse steps. The screen went black. And Damien felt the weight of the war he'd just declared settle fully on his shoulders. Then Ava whispered behind him. The Oracle is already awake. The wind picked up over the treetops, whispering through the pines like breath across glass. Damien stood outside the ranger station, his eyes still fixed on the last words Ava had spoken. The Oracle is already awake. Inside, Emily paced, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Ava sat cross-legged by the fire, silent, her hands resting on her knees, palms up, as if waiting to catch something that hadn't arrived yet. Damien stepped back in. "You said the oracle's awake," he said. "What does that mean?" Ava didn't look up. "It means she's dreaming again." Emily's voice was raw. "How do you know?" "She showed me," Ava whispered. "In the in-between, right before the needle. Her dreams feel like static. But under it, there's shape, pattern. She's remembering things that haven't happened yet." Damien's throat tightened. "Is she trying to warn you?" Ava nodded slowly. "She said there's a clock." "What kind of clock?" Ava's voice lowered. "The kind that ends." A heavy silence fell. Then Damien moved to the duffel bag and pulled out a satellite tablet. He reconnected to the secure channel, the globe reappearing. The markers still pulsed, 6 locations, but now, one was blinking red. Not the vault in D.C. Greenland. He tapped it. A file opened. Echelon Research Outpost 07. Status: compromised. Emily stood beside him. Compromised how? Suddenly, new data streamed across the screen. Emergency pings. Bursts of fragmented messages. One showed briefly, "Subject breach confirmed, gate-wide collapse imminent." Damien stared. The oracle's not in D.C. anymore. They moved her. Emily leaned over his shoulder. "To isolate her? Or to contain her?" Damien said. "If she's projecting across distances, she's not just psychic. She's broadcasting. And they're trying to cage the signal." He turned to Ava. "Can you find her?" Ava hesitated. "Only if she wants to be found." "Would she?" "She already is." The satellite pinged again. A new message appeared at the top of the screen, but this time it wasn't system-generated. It was handwritten script. "The gate is opening. The dreamer is waking. You are already inside." Emily backed away. "What the hell does that mean?" Damien's voice was steady, too steady. "We've been in this longer than we thought." He tapped another command. "Sending it to Logan. I want a private jet fueled and in the air in under an hour." "You're going to Greenland?" Emily asked. "We are," he said. "If the oracle's broadcasting, then someone out there's listening. And whatever they started in Project Laceleaf, this is how it ends." Ava walked to him, her eyes heavy with something far older than her age. "You won't stop it," she said softly. "But you might steer it." Damien looked down at her. "Then we steer." They flew out under nightfall. A black jet, stripped of transponders and tail numbers, slicing across Arctic air. Inside, Damien hunched over the tablet, parsing decoded documents from the seed chip. Emily stayed close to Ava, who had curled up in a seat, headphones in, sketching on a notepad without looking down. Damien watched her draw. Strange symbols. Geometric spirals. Fractured eyes and towers made of hands. A clock with its numbers running backward. "Does she know what she's drawing?" he whispered. Emily shook her head. "She says it's what the oracle shows her." He turned back to the tablet. Project Laceleaf hadn't been about control. It had been about adaptation. The researchers hadn't created children to use, they'd created them as receivers. Each subject was tuned to a different emotional frequency. Fear, memory, instinct, death. Damien opened a subfile titled, "Interference Events, Subject Oracle." The first entry chilled him. Event number 1, age 2. Subject Oracle cried non-stop for 91 hours. No medical cause found. Event matched timestamp of earthquake in Sichuan, China. Death toll, 69,000. He flipped to the next. Event number 3, age 6. Subject entered coma for 7 minutes. Awoke speaking Farsi, unknown to staff. Timestamp aligned with covert drone strike in northern Iran. Civilian casualties confirmed, sealed. And another. Event number 7, age 10. Subject flatlined for 23 seconds. When revived, she whispered, "The shepherd has opened the third gate." 7 hours later, the Echelon mainframe detected an unauthorized breach. No source identified. Emily was reading over his shoulder now. She wasn't reacting to tragedy. She was linked to it. Ava spoke suddenly, eyes still closed. They didn't grow her like the others. They found her. Damien turned. Where? Somewhere warm, Ava murmured. With red dirt and no sky. They called it the threshold site. She was already there. Waiting. The plane buckled slightly as it began descent. A voice crackled through the cockpit intercom. Approaching target. We've got heat signatures near the outpost. It's not empty. Damien stood. Then we're not alone. The facility in Greenland rose like a dead god's tomb from the ice. Steel towers half collapsed. Wind turbines creaking in the frozen wind. The snow around the complex was stained black in patches, scorched or oiled. Something had happened here. Damien, Emily, and Ava moved fast, dressed in thermal suits, gear strapped tight. A security team, former operatives loyal only to Damien, swept the perimeter. Inside the outpost, the power flickered. Red emergency lights lit the halls. They found bodies. Not fresh, weeks old. Scientists. Guards. Some still seated at their desks, eyes wide, mouths frozen mid-scream. Emily covered Ava's eyes. Damien crouched beside one body, brushing away snow. A word had been carved into the wall behind the corpse, jagged and deep. Remember US. They pushed deeper. Past the labs. Past the security locks. Into the cold core, the chamber where Subject Oracle had been kept. It was empty. The restraints lay open on the floor, dripping with water. No blood. No signs of violence. Just one thing left behind. A small, child-sized hospital bracelet. Damien picked it up. Name. Unknown. Subject class. Oracle. Condition. Stable/contained. Emergency clearance level. Omega null. Then Ava stepped forward. Her sketchbook slipped from her hands. A single page fluttered free. It was a picture of the bracelet. Drawn days ago. And beneath it, in her own handwriting. She woke up, because I called her. A hum filled the air. Deep, low, vibrating through bone. Emily grabbed Ava. What is that? Ava turned slowly toward the chamber's far wall. There's something behind it, she whispered. She's still here. Damien walked to the wall. No seams. No hinges. But the humming intensified. And suddenly, the wall breathed. Not moved. Breathed. Damien stepped back. A strip of metal along the floor glowed with blue light. The wall split open. A figure stood behind it. Small. Pale. Hair so light it shimmered like dust. Eyes completely white. The Oracle. She looked up at them, and though she never opened her mouth, her voice filled the room. You shouldn't have come. Damien didn't speak. Couldn't. The Oracle stood perfectly still in the doorway of her containment chamber, barefoot on metal, body thin and trembling, but not from fear. She seemed aware, composed, like someone who'd already lived through this moment 1,000 times before. The white of her eyes wasn't blindness. They glowed faintly, like the last embers in a dying fire. You shouldn't have come, she repeated, not aloud but into their minds. Her voice wasn't singular, it carried layers. Childlike and ancient, sorrowful and commanding, overlapping like an echo speaking to itself. Emily tightened her grip on Ava's hand. She's projecting again. Ava nodded, barely. Louder this time. Damien stepped forward slowly. We're not here to hurt you. We came because Ava, my daughter, she felt you. She saw you. The Oracle tilted her head slightly, her hair sliding like silk over her shoulder. She was never meant to see. You made her remember. Damien's voice was quiet. I didn't make her anything. I'm trying to protect her. The oracle's gaze didn't move from Ava. You gave her choice. That was not in the design. Then the design was wrong, Damien said, jaw tight. The oracle blinked once. A soft hum rolled through the walls again, not mechanical. Biological. The sound of something deep within the facility. Waking. Ava stepped forward, away from Emily. Toward the oracle. Ava, Damien started. But she shook her head. She's not angry. She's scared. The oracle flinched at that. Ava reached out a small hand. What are you afraid of? There was silence. Then the walls trembled. Not from impact. From something rising, like pressure before a storm. The red lights flickered. The floor creaked. And suddenly the oracle's lips moved. Not telepathically. She actually spoke for the first time. My dreams are leaking. Damien stared at her. What does that mean? I am a conduit, she whispered, voice barely a thread. They didn't build me. They found me. And they broke the locks. The room's lights blew out in a single pop. Emily pulled Ava back instinctively. The oracle's head tilted back. She whispered one more word. Run. The ceiling above them split with a crack like lightning. An entire support beam tore loose and crashed into the cold core chamber just behind them. Water began flooding from cracked pipes. The hum turned to a roar. Damien grabbed Ava, Emily right beside him. Move. They bolted, sprinting through the dark corridor, alarms wailing behind them, water rising fast underfoot. The entire facility groaned as if alive, shuddering with every second. Above them, red emergency lights lit their path sporadically. At every turn, Ava whispered directions without hesitation. This way. Left. Down. Now. She wasn't guessing. She was following something. They reached the surface moments before the floor behind them collapsed. The oracle appeared behind them, not walking. Standing. As if she'd always been there. And suddenly so were others. Figures. Children. Half a dozen at least. Different ages. Boys. Girls. Pale and confused. Some held their heads. Others stared into nothing. Emily gasped. The others. They were real. And free. The oracle looked to Ava. Spoke without speaking. You opened the gate. Ava nodded slowly. I'm sorry. Don't be. Another blast shook the ground behind them. A mechanical voice blared from the remains of the facility. Containment breach. Immediate failsafe engaged. Countdown initiated. Facility self-destruct in T-5 minutes. Damien looked at the others. Can they run? They're weak, the oracle said. But if we guide them, yes. Damien activated his wrist beacon. Logan. Extraction now. Coordinates locked. Static. Then. Inbound. 5 minutes out. You better be in the open. They led the children out into the icy clearing beyond the compound. Wind howled. Lights blinked above, the rescue craft descending like a god's answer to a prayer. The oracle stopped beside Ava. I can't go with you. Ava turned, startled. Why not? I am the gate, she whispered. Wherever I go, it follows. Damien stepped in. There has to be another way. The oracle looked at him, her gaze far deeper than her years. You've seen only one thread of this story. But it's woven into something older. The seed wasn't just data. It was memory. Something they tried to contain in flesh. You're saying it's not over, Damien said. I'm saying, she paused, you haven't even reached the beginning. The children were loaded onto the evac transport. Emily helped one boy who sobbed quietly, blood dried at his temple. Another girl clung to Ava like a lifeline. The oracle stepped away, toward the cold ruins of the facility, her bare feet silent in the snow. Ava called out. Wait. She turned, one final time. Ava, she said softly, you made a choice. That's all I ever wanted. Now make another. And then she turned her face to the sky, closed her eyes, and began to hum. That same lullaby from the tapes. The same one Damien remembered from his childhood. As the rescue ship lifted off, the cold core erupted below, not in fire, but in silence. The ground folded inward, as if swallowing its own memory. They soared into the sky, leaving only steam and snow behind. On board, the children lay bundled, asleep or sedated. Damien stood at the rear hatch, staring down at the last place he'd seen her. Emily came to stand beside him. She saved them. He nodded. She didn't have to. Ava joined them, silent. She handed Damien her sketchbook. A new page. Drawn moments before they'd left. A door, cracked open. And something dark coiled behind it. Underneath it, she'd written 3 words. It followed us. Damien's pulse spiked. He looked to Ava. She met his eyes. The oracle didn't close the gate. A pause. She became it. The jet cut through the upper atmosphere, a sleek silhouette against the stars, carrying 17 passengers, most of them children who hadn't seen sunlight in months. Or years. Some sat silent, blinking at nothing. Others dozed in fetal positions. One girl hummed tunelessly, pressing her ear against the window as though listening for something on the other side of the sky. At the rear of the cabin, Damien sat across from Ava, her sketchbook open between them. He stared at the latest page. The door. The thing behind it. It followed us, she'd written. But she wasn't crying. She wasn't even afraid. Just watching. Are you sure? He asked quietly. It's not just memory. Trauma? Ava looked up at him. No. It's not behind us. It's in us. Emily stepped into the aisle, overhearing. Her eyes were sunken, red-rimmed from exhaustion and something deeper, like the strain of carrying a secret even her body didn't know how to keep. What does that mean? She asked. Ava turned the page. Another drawing. This one was of herself, asleep on a cot. But in the reflection of the window beside her, there were 2 of her. One sitting still. One standing. Watching. I brought something back, Ava whispered. Not all of her. Just the piece that saw too much. Damien clenched his fists. Then we get it out. Surgery. Neurological mapping. My team can. No, Ava interrupted. It's not inside my head. It's inside the others too. They felt it the moment she collapsed the gate. Damien looked toward the front of the plane where the other rescued children were buckled in. You're saying whatever she was, it imprinted? Ava nodded. Like a wake behind a boat. Like the memory of a scream. Emily sank into the seat beside her. Then what do we do? Ava looked down at her hands, flexing her fingers like she expected them to move on their own. We wait, she said softly. Until it speaks. Damien stood, tension twisting through his muscles. No, that's not enough. I need a lab. An analysis. Surveillance. Full diagnostics on every child. Ava looked up. You still think this is a tech problem? Emily glanced between them. It's not, she asked. No, Ava said. It's a story problem. Damien frowned. A story. Ava leaned forward, her voice a whisper between them. She wasn't just a psychic. Or a weapon. She was a mirror. Every terrible thing that happened to us, to the world, she remembered it before it happened. Like dreams that arrived early. Emily's voice was hoarse. That's what the project was trying to control. They thought if they could control the dream, Ava said, they could stop the future. And instead, Damien murmured, they created a child who remembered the end before the beginning ever came. Ava closed the sketchbook. She didn't want to be a god. She just wanted to forget. Suddenly, the jet lurched. Not a drop in altitude. Something else. All the lights flickered. The engines didn't fail. But the air changed. Went cold. Damien turned toward the cockpit. Pilot, report. No answer. Emily stood, pale. Something's wrong. Ava walked to the front of the cabin. The others stirred behind her. The girl by the window began humming again. Then, the screens flickered on. All of them. At once. Not static. Not surveillance feeds. A video. The Oracle. Not from any recorded footage. Not archived. This wasn't a memory. This was now. She stood in a vast white space, empty, her eyes closed. When she opened them, she spoke. Aloud. Through every speaker on the plane. It didn't follow you. You brought it. Because it was never mine to hold. Damien stepped forward. What are you? I am the echo, she said. The last ripple of a wave that began before memory. I was only the mouth. You, her eyes turned to Ava, were always the seed. Ava trembled, just once. The screens went dark. The plane steadied. Emily clutched the seat back. What the hell just happened? Damien checked his tablet. No signal. No data. No power. Everything had been reset. Then one file blinked into existence. Project Laceleaf / final entry / authorized eyes only. He opened it. There was a single image. A woman's face. Not the Oracle. Not Ava. Older. Dark-haired. Familiar. Emily gasped. It's me, she whispered. Damien looked up, stunned. The file expanded. Text loaded beneath the photo. Subject Genesis. Initiator class. Gene layer carrier. Emotional imprint transmission. She was placed into proximity with Subject 0 to initiate the latent bond. Emotional resonance was required to unlock full code in offspring. Unaware of her role. Modified memory. Secure until seed reaches activation threshold. Emily backed away, shaking. No. That's not. That can't be. Damien grabbed her shoulders. They used you. They put you near me as a child. To make this happen. She stared at Ava. I was never supposed to remember, she whispered. They let me fall in love with you, because it made her real. Ava's voice broke through the silence. They didn't make me, she said. You did. You both did. But not in a lab. Emily dropped to her knees. Damien knelt beside her, unsure whether to speak. And Ava looked up at the ceiling, her eyes filling with tears. They thought they could use love like a machine. But love isn't a tool. It's a door. The lights flickered again. And suddenly, the youngest child on board stood up. He pointed out the window. Damien turned. In the sky ahead, far above, something was falling. A satellite. Burning. Glowing red-orange. And behind it, something else. A shimmer in the sky. A crack. A gate. But this time, they were above it. Not beneath. Ava whispered. We have to choose. Emily wiped her face. Choose what? Do we land, Ava said. Or do we see what's waiting on the other side? Damien stared at her. Then, at the children. Then at the burning line tearing through the stars. The plane's control panel blinked. Auto. Divert/ascend. Manual. Return/descend. A choice. And for once, no one could make it but him. He looked at Emily. At Ava. And reached for the controls. A breath. A heartbeat. Then, a decision. And the screen went dark.